Sebi says, episode 6. Welcome. We got my guest today is Brandon Ruffin.
What up? What up?
Oh my God, my dog, bro. Like I stated before, what isn't there to say about you? I was,
bro.
like,
Sanai's, he's everywhere, man.
yeah. So I mentioned, I was like, Sanai, guess what I have on the podcast on Sunday? And he goes, and I was like, Brandon Ruffin. He was like, that's a Renaissance man right there.
Man. Dude, Sanai is too, bro. I'm trying, man.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody about this idea of the Renaissance man.
Oh,
Like,
no way, yeah.
I've always been fascinated by that personality type, like this. And obviously, Renaissance men just weren't always men, but like people who would try to master multiple mediums.
Yeah.
Because we're in such a world where it's like everything is about, all right, I'm just gonna get good at this one thing. I'm gonna dedicate to this one thing, and
that's what we hear so often. We get
Yeah.
beaten into us that, hey, you got to pick one thing and you got to be masterful at that.
It is. That's the truth in a way, right? I think this is what's so amazing about when we talk about the Renaissance men the classics, and their ability to do all these different things like really well and focus on gaining a mastery of different mediums. But you also, I think, it's hard to detangle that, like, sometimes they were doing this over a lifetime. And so one of my early, I think, missteps with being interested in so many different things was trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah. I remember feeling the fuck out of that feeling. Like
Yeah.
wanting to be in photography, wanting to draw, paint, wanting to be into martial arts, wanting to do, so many things, right?
And trying to do it all at once, like at a high level, right? And it was my wife, man, that told me, like, you don't have to give up on something. When you put it down, it doesn't mean you're giving up on it, right? Mm-hmm. You can put it down, focus in on one thing, and then pick up the other stuff as it comes. And for me, that was like a critical step because, there was a point, man, I was like doing photography. I was working as a detective.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
What?
working as a detective, making music, playing music at live shows, trying to write screenplays and figure out my way to make films, and just like a million things. And on top of, at the time, having my now 12-year-old, but having a young daughter. I have two girls, and so having a young daughter at the time, like all these different things, having a side business here and trying to start a startup here, like it was just doing so many things all at once, and there was not enough time in the day, and there was no way to do all of that well. And so it was like, as I started like learning more about the lives of these people that we title as these Renaissance men, I'm like, oh, okay, so that's the trick. You don't have to do it all in your 20s or try to do everything in 1 year, like consistently every year you're doing all these things. It can be this thing where in your life, like, you practice this ability of adaptability, being malleable to change and being able to learn new things, always eager to research. And especially with today, like, we have everything at our fingertips. You can go on YouTube right now and learn. We can figure out how to start building a rocket ship in your backyard right now. Everything is sitting there for us to consume and try to learn from. And so having that desire to learn new things is good, but it doesn't mean you have to always put it into action. Sometimes you can learn something and just keep it under your hat and be like, I'm gonna get into that one day, I'm gonna try that one day, or that thing can inform the way you approach something you're specifically working in at the moment. So that's been my biggest sort of focus, is how can I compartmentalize these things that I want to do and try to do them while not feeling like I'm giving up on the things that I'm tabling for the moment.
What is right now something that is at the top of your list that you're...
Man, everything. No,
I feel you.
Filmmaking still. I wrote and directed a film about 2 years back, and wanted to follow that up with a film last year, but I actually ended up getting invited by Leica to be the ambassador for one of their camera launches.
Leica?
Yeah.
What's Leica?
Leica camera. It's like call it like the AP. It's like the AP of the photography world, right? Like, it's these handmade, hand-built German cameras have been around forever, and I'm one of their USA ambassadors.
Oh shit, cool.
And so they did a launch last year.
Is this where I see like the hashtag Leica on your post?
Yep.
Okay. Is that your primary camera that you use?
Yeah, I use like in that case right there, just getting back from the shoot, there's a couple of Leicas in there, and Todd Heido, who's an amazing photographer, Bay Area photographer too, and been around for a long time. He was describing why would a photographer have multiple cameras, and it's just like picking a different paintbrush to do different strokes on an image, right? Like they're all doing the same thing, but they're allowing you to do different things at different times for the ultimate goal. So yeah, like I shoot Leica. I love them. It's not the only great camera out, right? Like I tell people all the time, it's very hard to find a bad camera today. They're all so
Right.
good. They all do so much. And ultimately, like the quality of picture, the quality, like the way in which it's going to impact people, has more to do with what's happening inside of you first, right? Like before you even press the shutter and take a picture, like everything that I think is really important about the picture is happening with the actual photographer themselves. Leica is my specific choice, but I've shot everything. Canon, Sony, Fuji. I was a Fuji ambassador for a couple of years prior to Leica. They're all good, man.
Okay, so you have been a brand ambassador for several cameras, not just the Leica.
Not just Fujifilm for about 2 years and some change, and then I was just not shooting specifically for any brand for about a year, and then some time it went on, and just continued building a relationship with Leica, and it felt intuitive to become an ambassador with them, and it's been really good.
You just felt like that was the one that you had to rock with, right?
Yeah. There were some things that they were interested in working with me on, and some things they thought I could bring to their community. It's kind of like the family, if you will, and there was definitely some things that were super aligned with me as a photographer and Leica as a brand, and like the things that they support within the photography community and the initiatives they have.
Something about your style specifically that they liked and wanted for you to be able to give to.
I feel like I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine who's also a Leica ambassador, and I think people are, and this is myself as well, especially when prior again with Fuji, I was trying to get with Sony, and I had a lot of friends that were Sony ambassadors, and if at the time I felt like everybody was a Sony ambassador except for me.
So did it feel like you wanted to get into that?
Yeah,
Sony
like
family?
there's this like idea of getting into, if all your homies are shooting Sony and they're all part of this thing, like you want to be part of it. And I was a lot younger then, so my mentality even about being connected to brands was different, but it was more so, all the homies are, it's like all the homies are on varsity, you want to be on varsity, you know what I mean?
Right.
And but it was always very mysterious, like how do you develop this relationship with a brand? What are they looking for? What kind of photography do they want? What type of things do you need to be doing to even get their attention, let alone being invited to be part, of their family? And it was one of those things, again, it was always very mysterious to me. Fuji happened some years later through a connection I had. There's a really amazing photography, video, lighting, and all that. Looking Glass in Berkeley.
Did I run into you there one time? Was that the
Looking Glass? I don't think so.
Okay.
But they had a connection with a Fuji rep, and they thought that I would get along well with them, which was correct. Me and that rep got to start just kind of light conversation and talking about some ideas, and I got invited to a couple meetings, and then this and that, and then before you knew it, I was a Fujifilm ex-photographer, which was dope.
That's tight. Oh my God. So how does that go? Do you have to meet somebody specifically? They look at the shoot that you've completed?
Yeah, I think they look at the work
portfolio,
and they want to get an understanding of who you are and what your intentions are with the medium. And then every brand, like at the end of the day, every brand is looking to sell their product. Every brand is looking to sell their cameras, right? Like that's number one, and that's a realistic number one. If you don't sell stuff,
crazy.
Then you're
like I'm thinking about it now. It's right. You have somebody who's like clean as fuck at skateboarding, and they're like, "Hey, I want to put Nike on you because I want people to start buying hella Nike." So then, do they see? Oh shit! Like I like Brandon Ruffin's photos. I want to start using the sort of cameras that he's using.
I wouldn't say that I'm having that influence on people. I'm sure that some people will see my work, or they'll see what kind of photographer I am, and it might bring them to being interested in Leicas, right? Like, these cameras are insanely expensive for what you for the competing cameras. Like they're usually 3, 4, 5 times as much. So not everybody wants to or should spend that money on a camera, especially if it's like more of a business purchase. Like it's not always the most economic thing, but there's this idea of what does a camera do for you as an artist? What does it make you feel? What does it make you want to do with it? If a camera only makes you want to shoot it when it's like a paid shoot, then for me, that's not the camera for me. I need a camera that makes me want to like go out and participate in the art form. And Leica makes what's called a rangefinder, and their rangefinders are all manual. Rangefinders require you to look through a piece of optic, and that inside there you're like looking at the world around you, and then there's a relationship happening with the lens and the focal distance of the lens spatially that helps you get an image in the focus. So like without trying to break down all the mathematics on rangefinders, I'll just say it's a very manual process. It's a very hands-on process.
Right. It takes skill.
It takes skill. It is like you have to have some technical ability, so you have to put in the reps with the camera, and it's not the fastest, it's not the easiest, but it's an experience. And once you shoot that way, you get used to it and you like it. There's no other experience like that with a camera. And so Leica falls in this space where they're the only one, I think right currently, like the only manufacturer who offers new rangefinder cameras in that form factor.
Bro, that sounds hell of fun, right?
Especially if you love photography, like this is like fun stuff. And so Leica has a long history with photography. Some of the best photographers in the history of the medium have shot with Leicas. And so they have a really rich history, a really deep connection to photography. And again, like I appreciated their approach to it.
Yeah.
Take away the fact that every single one of these brands are looking to sell cameras. There was a very like pure approach and a real, in my opinion, a real respect for photography and the medium that I don't always see with other brands. Fuji also had that feeling, right? There was a community of people who enjoyed Fuji, and you even look at the way they designed their cameras, you can understand that they're designing cameras for people who love photography, not necessarily people who love all the latest and greatest technology. These cameras all have a lot of great technology in them, but it doesn't feel like that's their starting point. And so for me, with Leicas, they always feel they start with what is the modern day photographer want and need, and how can we support that? And then what technology can we build into our cameras that will support that? But yeah, I think there's been plenty of people I know that have become interested in Leicas because of me, or because of like the guys and girls that I hang out with who shoot Leica, that we shoot these cameras, respect the brand, and that these are tools that we often, go to pick up. And it's obviously the tool works for us, so that's usually enough right there. It's like, I never really thought about it, but maybe let me check it out. And to be honest, one of the big things is that there wasn't like trying to make people who are, or at least communities who are not traditionally growing up with a Leica sitting in the attic that grandpa had, or like necessarily having the socioeconomic means to have these things just floating around them, to understand that, this is a very prestigious brand, but you're just as deserving to shoot this brand.
I love that.
You're just as worthy to rock this camera as anybody else.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's important to me. Yeah. But I dare say I would love for some cat in Richmond to be like, I'm gonna get me on one of these days, because I saw it. And he's from Richmond, and just like that, I can too. Mentality, I think, is really important to me. In what ways can I create space for people who come from where I come from to have that I can too attitude, or I can even do better? Like I want somebody to look at my work and be like, it's cool, it gives me some inspiration, but I want to be bigger, I want to do more, I want to, whatever it is, like whatever their goalpost is, I pray that their goalpost, that they set 100 yards further than whatever mine was, or wherever they see me now. Like they want to do it bigger and better. Because it was, especially with photography, like I didn't feel like we didn't have a lot of like representation that way when it came to being from Richmond and being from West Contra Costa County.
Who's repping? You know what I'm saying? I'm a photographer out of Richmond. I'm a photographer out of Oakland. I'm really trying to be. But
there was people though. There were people. But I just feel like those narratives weren't necessarily delivered to us. Right. The narratives that we got were another murder, more gangs, more dope sales, all this stuff that's happening. Meanwhile, we're literally living this life in Richmond that, sometimes the homie gets killed, but also like we have all this community, all these sports teams that we're part of, like all these schools that we're somehow connected to through our, like,
it's more rich than what it was.
The narrative is so much more robust.
Yeah.
But what we constantly are getting delivered back to us is this very high level, sensational narrative of Richmond has this many murders this year, and the National Guard's coming into Richmond to help the Richmond PD, and the CH, like all these things. But there's so much more happening here. Because here we are living a life that is not, it's every day somebody's getting killed around us, right? It's not every day that we're watching people use or deal dope, or that like every day you're walking home from Salesians and somebody come like, down with the set.
Like I gotta be something to really worry about.
Like these things were not like a everyday part of our lives. It was an active part of our lives, but it was definitely exaggerated. Yeah. And so I had this focus of I wanted the narrative to be something different. Let me present. And so when I was younger, like when I went to LA for school, I always would just be like, oh yeah, I'm from the Bay Area, because I didn't want to tell people I was from Richmond. Like I didn't, not that I didn't feel a certain way about it, but I knew people felt a certain way about Richmond.
Right.
Even in the Bay Area, people do. So I was like, I didn't want people to start to make any assumptions about me. I wanted them to just get to know me.
Get to know you.
Not here in Richmond and be like, oh, okay. Like,
let me plaster him with assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. But now, man, I have so much pride, and I want people to understand that immediately when they meet me. Like, I am from Richmond. I grew up in Richmond. Richmond is what made me. And look at all these things that I'm capable of doing at a high level because of that place. So obviously there was more going on than just like murders and dope dealing and gang.
Right.
You know, so it's like, look at all these things that this city produced, and like I'm not the only one. There's a lot of great people who have come out of this place. Has come out of West Contra Costa County. You know, so all this narrative that we're constantly confronted with is not the end all be all narrative.
Yeah. It's actually polished and refined who you are as a man and 100%. Your
100%.
artistry.
And it's given me trials and tribulations to go through to actually be somebody who can create art and have some depth and be looking for answers in this life. Yeah. So yeah, I'm hoping that someone will see what I'm doing or see what I've done and be like, oh yeah, like I want to, and that person's right here in the Rich and goes, yeah, I can do that. Yeah. I can do that. If he can, I can definitely do it. Yeah. So yeah, that's been like one of my big missions is create. Yeah.
That's the MO right now. That's what you're embodying. That's what you're carrying with you as an artist right now.
One of many things, but that's like a big thing for me. Something I think about a lot is in what ways am I carving out a road to make it either easier or to make it more tangible, to make the pathway a little bit more focused for somebody who's also like me. It was like, I'm an artist. I'm living in this place that doesn't always feel the most artistic. Like, what should I do? And things have changed a lot. Yeah. I was listening to Mr. Fab. He's always putting out some wisdom on the gram, man. And he was just talking about how...
I noticed that you took photos of Mr. Fab at one of those events.
Man, anytime I see...
Fab, you got to get him in front of the lens. Huh?
Yeah, and he's always hella cool about it. Like, I've known Fab for some years, and he always sees me with a camera in my hand. And yeah, if I see him, it's always love.
What did he say? What did he
So he was just talking about the way in which like social media has made all the cities, like it's made everywhere very similar, and how culturally, the Bay Area has lost some parts of its culture and adopted other parts of the culture. Even like you talk about the slang, this social media, we're all hearing and seeing the way that everybody else is.
Like you'll go to Texas and they're saying some shit like we say here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he was talking about. Just like this idea of like even the slang itself has been handed over and it circulates in a particular type of way, in a way it didn't when the 80s and the 90s.
So much easier to get from here to Peru.
Imagine like
my cousin's saying shit that I'm like, oh, how do you know this?
And you just think about like how different those worlds are, right? Like my sister lived in Peru for years, and I got a chance to go down there, and I just saw, this is 2012, and even then, I just saw how different life could be. And then you go down there now, and like you said, that like the way people dress, talk, walk, the slang they may use could be so similar to what you would hear here in the Bay or here in Los Angeles or something like that. Like the way in which culture travels is just at the speed of a post.
It's limitless.
It's literally the speed of a post. I love that. Limitless, man. And how expansive it is, our relationships.
Do you feel like it makes it easier to connect now, based off of the fact that?
I think it makes it easier to initially connect, right? It makes it easier to get acquainted. I think real connection, sometimes it can make it harder because one, now those connections are competing with all these other people you also have access to. And there are things that are experienced like this face to face. There are things that are experienced and translated over that you can't do over social media. So I think because it feels like we're doing a thing, sometimes you don't actually go out and do the thing. You have a friend, you have a friend in, let's just use Peru again, right? Like you have a friend in Peru for a decade and never actually see him in person, versus if you met somebody who lived in Peru, they were like out on a trip while here and you guys really vibed, and then you're talking on the phone, like eventually you're going to go to Peru. Yeah. Or eventually they're going to come back here or whatever it is. I just feel like with social media, it combines so many different elements of socializing that you feel like you're really participating in somebody's life, even though you're not. Even though you're just witnessing it, you're not truly so I think getting acquainted and the initial connection 100%, but the longevity in that connection or having like authentic, real human connection, I think it can delay it a little bit because it does feel like you've gone a
You've
step
already
further.
have it,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, yo, what's the reason for a deep rooted connection? If
And I don't even think like we're
almost
saying that like in our minds, but you feel like you're doing more than you are. So for instance, like when you do the high school reunions, and because you see somebody on Facebook
you think
or
you've already
TikTok,
been,
or
like you're
you
caught
feel
up
like
with them,
you
right?
just feel like you're really part of their lives, and then you go to a reunion, you realize, oh man, I haven't seen this person in 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
We haven't been together since high school. I don't really quite know all the things I think I know about you.
I had my, not to cut you off, I had my buddy James Quintero on the show right before you. He was on episode 5, and he was talking about how, man, honestly, like I watched the episodes because it's the homies, it's the people that I grew up with. If you were interviewing people from like St. Mary's or a different high school, like I could give a shit. You know what I'm saying? But what's cool is what he said is I'm providing a platform for the homies, the people who are making a living out of their passion. At least that's the goal. That's what I'm trying to emphasize here, that it's possible. But they have a space to describe it through their lens, through their point of perspective, like what they went through, and that's just so great, right? Because like you're saying, it's like you can see what they're posting on Instagram, you can see the stories, and you can feel like you're caught up, but there's so much of a deeper, genuine connection to know like it really from their eyes, from behind, what they're seeing. But we did hop to like what it is that you're doing now, and that was like the initial start of the podcast. But I'd love to take it back to the inception of it. I'd love to take it back to like our earlier days at Salesian.
Oh man,
and like your earliest memories of meeting me, and what was your experience like? How did Salesian build who you are in terms with athletics, sports, the teachers you've met? But yeah, what is there maybe like an earliest memory that you have of?
Man, I'll say the early memories of you were obviously your mom was my Spanish teacher, right? But also your mom was like not just a regular teacher, like she was one of the teachers that was like really invested in all of us. Like everybody knew Miss Lampton. Like everybody knew Lampty, and she was one of those people that like you have some teachers that are just there doing their best, but they're just there, and then you have the ones that are like integrated into your being. So rather you're in her class or not, you know who she is,
right?
And you're going to interact with her, and she's going to interact with you, and your mom was like firm, but so no one was trying to test your mother, right? Like she was very firm, but she was also not a tyrant.
Yeah.
She was firm, and then it felt, oh, you're firm because you really love us. You really want to see us leave from this place one day and do well. And you're actually interested in us. Yeah. Your mom was a part of like all of our lives. And then, of course, like you're popping around as a youngster, as a straight youth.
Yo, some people remember me.
Bro, I remember you as like in my mind, like mind you, I'm a kid myself. Like I'm 13, 14 years old. But I remember you like as a kid, like running around, and which is also a trip, like how time truncates things, right?
It's trippy.
When you're 13, it feels like, because what year were you born?
1990.
Yeah, so I was born in 85. We're only 5 years apart.
Yeah, right.
But at that time, that 5 years feels huge when you're kids, right?
Yeah,
and then time starts doing this because you guys are getting older, and it's moving this way. It's condensing, and now we're just like two old cats. Like people, we're interacting with other adults who were born in the 2000s and stuff, right? Yeah. But yeah, my early memories of you were just running around. Yeah, doing his own thing. I think we all, you were like part of the program. You were part of the program, and I think because of who your mom was, like, of course, people noticed you. And
they did. I was like highlighted. I remember, you know what I'm saying? Like I would put my hood on. That was the thing. Like you couldn't put your hood on. I don't know what the issue was, but it's take your hood off. But they'd be like, yo, your son. I'm like,
the high standard. But no, it was like, those are my early memories of you. It was just like you when you were young, and all the energy you had just running around. And I think because we all felt connected to your mom, and we all felt connected to you, so you're like the little brother running around. Yeah. And just to watch you just grow into a young man, into a man, and all the things that come with that. And again, like the way that time just truncates, then you start finding yourself in the same places at the same time. So it's like, at that time we're like a whole world apart. And then as time goes on, graduating out of college around the same time, and now looking for our first jobs. Right. Like now we're in our career at the same time.
Struggles, same
kids around the same, like all these things start to become the same. And yeah, man, those were the early memories. I think Salesians was.
You played soccer.
Yes, I was playing basketball when I first got there. That didn't last long. My grades were shit, so I got pulled from that. Football. Played football, soccer, Track. Yeah, I got into track like towards the end.
Oh, you were fast.
I was fast.
Oh, you were
man.
fast. I heard
fast,
10-9.
Man, those were good. That was a good time, man. Like I remember thinking I was gonna go play college soccer, which I don't know if I ever would have. Maybe if I would have focused more, but track just popped up as one of those things that I had a knack for, and I was doing the long jump and doing the 100-meter dash, 200, and the 4, and yeah, I mean, it was good for me. It gave me something to focus on and stay with athletically, and soccer was great. The soccer team was like a family.
That's Coach what keeps Joe us tied. Thank God. Thank Coach Joe for the
deep ties, man. Right? Like Coach Joe has literally kept us together in so many ways, and I think even I used to go out to see when Anthony was in New York, man. I would see Butler like every year, and yeah, just the ties that it built. Salesian was a great place. I think there was something about the size of it. It was small as far as how many of us were there, and
500 students.
Yeah,
it wasn't a big school.
Not at all, and that makes this environment where everybody knows each other and the teachers know you, and it's just like this. It becomes like this family, man, and
very tightly knit.
Very tightly knit, and I'm happy to say I still have like I still have friends from Salesians that I see, and like me and Keith, like our daughters now both go to the same school and are in the same Girl Scout troop and on the same basketball team and volleyball team, right? So like just having that, man, like these people that I've known since I was 13, 14 years old.
Did you, like, when you were in high school, were you into photography? Was there something that...
not at all.
Really?
The opposite.
Wow.
I was the opposite. Like, I always tell people the weirdest thing about, I'll say the most ironic, is that when I was young and I was always very active in the art, was always drawing. It's always just art was like always a part of who I was, man. And
so you haven't always gravitated towards
literally since kindergarten. I remember teachers telling me.
Okay, and what's the earliest memory there? What's like the
just like drawing. I remember drawing, and like my teachers were telling me like I could draw. I drew well, and which is like whatever. You're a kid, like, everybody's drawing, but I just always remember the teachers would tell me like, oh, you're good. This is good. You're good at this, and the way that I was super into comic books and stuff like that. So I was always drawing out of comic books. And
did you have a comic book in your head? Because I had my son on here like on episode 3, and him and his buddies make comic books.
Really?
And there's one that's called Color Olympics.
Nice.
And there's like this bad guy who's trying to remove all the color from the world. And
cold.
That's tight, right? Like it's a dope concept. Did you have one of those?
Yeah, I had a couple. My head was all over the place. I had a couple like comics I've been working on, but I think when it came to drawing, I was mainly like finding a love. Anything made by Image was dope to me, and I was always trying to draw characters like that. And shortly, I think I was like maybe 2000. I'm sorry, like 1997. I got into graffiti.
Shut up.
Yeah, I was like, that's how I got into hip hop at all. Was through like graffiti was my first stop into hip hop. Must have been like 97.
How old were you?
Or 96. I'm 39.
How old were you when you did graffiti?
I was like 11.
Okay.
Like 11 or 12. So I had to have been.
So wait, but what was like, you just saw it? You saw it on TV?
No, so my neighbor, who actually also went to Salesian, was older than us. He was like my next door neighbor. He had a book by this graffiti artist named Bates. Bates is a dope artist from Europe. He used to do all the trains in Europe. And yeah, he just gave me like this little booklet and yeah, I'd always been fascinated by graffiti. Anytime I see it, I would just look at it and try to figure out like how do you do it.
With a fucking spray can. How do you do this?
Even just, I was like, how do you see this? So then when I finally got that book, that was like my real first close-up of graffiti. Like I could bring the graffiti into my house. I could study, I could look at
I love that. Yeah.
So I had
versus just like driving by
driving or walking by. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I remember I traced every single letter in that book.
Shut up.
And then I went from tracing it to then just copying it. So like, all right, there's a B. Well, my tag is gonna be this. So I would like try to shape my letters the way that I was watching these letters be shaped, and I would just make little changes to it. So then until I could do my own style and do it without looking. I just knew that. And even now, even to this day, like when I do some graffiti or whatever, or sketch it out, there's still 100% references back to that style.
I love it.
And that like way of composing that go back to me just learning when I was 11 years old. So yeah, of course then I'm like trying to get my hands on more source material. And no pun intended, like the Source magazine would have in the back, they have graffiti. They have pictures of trains and balls and stuff in the back. I'm like searching the internet
like,
anywhere I could get
fucking
it.
cool, right? Like those magazines are sick.
Yeah,
that's
where you actually had to get your stuff from there, like Thrasher magazines. I was in the skating at the time, and
we didn't have a thread to go through.
Yeah, there was no
no search engine to type in like graffiti.
You wouldn't get nothing.
You had these curated pages that people put together.
Yeah, at best you would get like you would get some kind of real rudimentary website that would have like stuff on it. And I searched all that stuff too. Like I said, this had to be about 96, 97. Yeah, 96, 97, 98. And just learning everything I could. But as I got more into that, I just started getting more into like the entire hip hop universe and the culture of it all, and really got into Legions, got into breakdancing and
okay, B, what?
DJing, learning like turntablism and just DJing and how to mix. And
no wonder some might call you a Renaissance
man. That's when I was young, man. I could like just absorb.
Yeah. So it was graffiti, and then you got b-boy.
Yeah, so I got into the music. So there was an OG in the neighborhood who like used to make beats. And he wanted to have me and one of my neighbors be like, he wanted to have a youth rap group, but he wanted us to be like spitting like really dope, like conscious rap or whatever, man. And so he would give us like tapes and shit and CDs or whatever, mainly tapes at the time though. And then he actually let me borrow like his MPC, which was crazy. So he lets me borrow his MPC for a couple of days, and I got to like, he showed me how to make beats. You had to like, at the time, you had to use like a zip disk to put in the like load stuff.
What is the MPC? What is that?
The MPC is like this huge, it's like a huge like beat machine.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so, and they were expensive back in the day.
So he was like, yo, borrow this,
yeah, he like lived down the street, so, and the dude was probably in his like 30s or whatever at the time. And so yeah, he just taught us how to use it, and he let me bring it home for a couple of days, man. I just remember making like crazy beats on that thing and learning just how to sequence a beat. And my dad like learned how much this thing was worth. He's gonna take that shit back right now. So yeah, I gave it back, but I was hooked from there, man.
Yeah. And you got a taste of it. You're like, I really like this.
And he just put me on to some like legitimate hip hop that wasn't just. It was all legitimate, but it was like more of what I would call like underground hip hop and more conscious. So like what he'd give me like something by Cannibal Ox.
Cannibal Ox.
I've
never heard of that.
Like cats from Definitive Jux and stuff like that. And I think shortly after I was getting put, like another one of the cats that lived in the neighborhood put me on like Common, and I remember hearing a Slim Shady LP, and this was like probably 98 when that came out, and just hearing him, just so all this late 90s for me is when I was just really getting exposed.
I love the 90s, bro.
Man, it's just a great time, man, just really getting exposed to hip hop. So anyway, that all translates though, like this. So let's just say like I had always been into art and in a lot of different forms. I never understood photography when I was younger, man. I was just like, it didn't make any sense to me.
Really?
I'm like,
it never.
No.
Oh, shut up.
I'm like, man, you have a camera. I have a camera. There's a bottle here sitting there. We take a picture.
It's so funny that you bring that up, bro, because when you were explaining to me like this whole Leica thing and how like it's not just a matter of picking up the fucking camera and clicking. Like, there's a skill, there's a technique, there's a time. It could be slow, like. Right?
Soul. You got to put soul into it.
You got to put some soul into it. And I love that you were sharing that. And I'm glad that you said that because honestly, like I look at cameras and that before talking to you, obviously, I thought you pick up a camera, you take a shot. You know what I'm saying? You might go from top to bottom to top to bottom, a little angle, a little shift. You know what I'm saying? That's it. That's your artwork. Man. But it's to hear that there takes a certain amount of skill to it to actually produce delicious results. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure it's very satisfying to hit that shit, just like when I'm playing tennis and I hit, you know what I'm saying, just like that perfect form, that perfect whack,
everything smacks at one time,
and it just feels ooh so good. Like I'm sure there's that very exact same, like when you just take that fucking perfect.
Oh yeah. And there's times where you know it. There's times you take a picture and you go, man, that's gonna be it's gonna be a hot one. And I think when I was younger it was just like, I didn't understand that. And I always say, to me, photography is a medium of maturity, because you're taking things that exist in the real world. You're taking images of things that exist. You have to have an appreciation for, like when you're freezing time, you have to have an appreciation for the fleeting nature of it. And when you're young, you don't understand that time is such a delicate, quickly moving, fleeting thing, right? And so everything for me, I understand that everything I photograph that image will one day be a memorial to that thing, right? Every person, every building, every object, everything will go. Even this planet will go one day, right? And so like this understanding that you're having an appreciation for the fleeting nature of existence and of time. So for me, it's a medium of maturity, because the older you get, I think the more you start to understand how fleeting time is, how temporary everything is. So for me, that's what brought me to photography in a way, was like that experience. Like at a very high level, that experience was what really solidified it for me as a medium that I love. But I couldn't understand, man, 13, 12, 13,
dude, holy
14,
shit,
like none of that
bro.
makes
Like
sense
that's
at the
hard
time.
as fuck. That's deep as shit.
Yeah, that's how I experience it. Some people don't. Some people, they don't know why, but they like to snap photos. And I think when I first picked up a camera, I just liked the experience of documenting what me and the homies were doing, just snapping photos in a way. And over time, that turned into this love for photography and studying it more. And you get the camera bug, you get the photo bug, shutter bug, if you will, and you're locked in from there. For most people, you're just locked in.
When would you say it hit you? Like you were like, yo, like there is something, like almost it sounds spiritual to me.
Yeah.
Where it just,
I would say that it became more than just snapping photos. Probably if I really just started casually getting into cameras. Like my parents bought me this Kodak Easy Share one year, which are like these little Walgreens cameras. Like they're not disposable, but they're just like low megapixel, little digital cameras with all these automatic features that you would take on like a family vacation or something. Like you transport your mind back to the early 2000s, and it had video on it, so I could take videos. And when nobody was loading, not nobody, but
how
a lot
old
of
were
people,
you?
I was 19.
Okay.
So this was like 2005.
Okay.
I'm lying. 2005. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, about 2005.
Okay.
I was 19.
This is when all of a sudden, like it's a little by little, it starts creeping up.
Yeah, like it wasn't that I started really, what I would say, even considering myself a photographer at the time. I just knew I was like, man, I like being the guy with the camera. Like, I'm gonna just take this camera everywhere, like everything we do. I'm gonna be taking pictures and making videos of everything.
I love that.
And so that was cool. And then I would say college was like that. And a couple of people, like a handful, not even a handful, like half a handful of people I knew had what I would call professional cameras. And I was interested, but they were always super expensive. I'm like, I can't get one of those. I don't know. So I was always a little interested. I wanted to know more about how the camera worked. That was outside of my ability at the time.
Yeah. So college during that time is starting to...
Yeah, that's when I really got into I would say just documenting what me and my boys were doing.
And what were you and your boys doing? What was it that you guys...
Shenanigans, man. Yeah.
I love it.
Just bullshit.
Yeah.
We were young college athletes.
What, like what? Party?
Yeah, partying,
beach, skateboarding,
paintballing. I mean, not even paintballing, like shooting paintballs at people from roofs that were going to parties. Like standard stupid college shit, man. And
wait, so unsuspecting bystanders?
Yeah, like shit? People would be just driving by. We lived off this like main street in Northridge, and people would be driving by, and we would just be at the roof of this thing shooting paintballs, man.
Tell me, I had the shiesty, you know what I'm saying?
Nah, this was prior to the shiesty movement, man. Like, and just doing like dumb teenage shit. There was just when just kicking it. There was so much time that we had on campus because we were track athletes. There was like time where we were just on campus. Everybody else was home for vacations and stuff like that. So we would just be kicking it, man, having conversations. Like I remember we would record somebody get on the phone with a girl. We'd record them and just make it difficult for them. You know?
Put the pressure on them.
Yeah. It was stupid stuff, man. I remember like we put on like the Steve Irwin voice. We called it the cupcake hunter, man. Somebody's like cupcaking and we just like we'd be creeping on them. I hate you. And somebody's trying to sound all fly with a girl on the phone, and we're just
smooth operated type
smooth
shit.
operating. We're just like fucking it up. So just stuff like that. I don't know why we're making those videos. Like I said, this is before like YouTube and all that was really a thing like it is now. So
that's so cool. That's so cool that you guys had that kind of, because I was always very intrigued by that. I don't know if it's like the whole like dad behind the camera camcorder type shit like phenomenon, but I always found it so cool. Like VHS tapes, you know how they have that kind of like vintage like
you have a POV that's very like intimate and direct into the moment, right?
Yeah. So, I love that you guys were into that before.
I still have all those videos.
Do you still have
them? I still have all
you
those.
should make some sort of like clean ass 90s throwback
I'm sure a lot
edit.
of people just hope those videos are just so like corrupted or something.
They don't work no more. They don't work no more. You can't post them.
I still have all those videos, and they're just dope moments, man. Like sometimes it's just out at a track meet, man, catching people going back and forth with each other. You know the way boys do. And so, again, like this is before YouTube was really a thing that you were thinking about. It was around. But it wasn't like you were thinking, I'm about to make this to go put it on YouTube or
it's gonna go viral.
Facebook, and at the time Facebook didn't have any type of interface for that. You could put up pictures, but it was just like you couldn't put up video at all, I think, on Facebook. And MySpace was still around at the time.
It was for fun. You were doing it for
it was
fun.
literally
There was no
just for
agenda.
fun.
There was no...
It was just like this idea. I don't know why I'm making these videos. I don't know why I'm taking these pictures of everybody, but I just like to be the one to document the stuff that we're doing. And so it was like, that's when I would say I really got this understanding that I enjoyed that element, like camera in hand and documenting. This was not, to me, it was not art at all. Like, this was not art. This was just me
goofing
documenting
around.
Shit. I give people their pictures so they can load them to their MySpace or whatever, but just messing around. And I had this feeling like I wanted to just document everything.
There was something fun about it.
There was some I enjoyed. That was the only answer I needed, right? And the camera was small, so then you fast forward, man, to like right after college. I got this Canon G9, which was also, it was a point and shoot camera, but it was a little more serious.
This was out of college now?
This is right after I got out of college. So this camera was a little bit more serious, and you could find like interchangeable lenses for it, even though it didn't have an interchangeable lens, but you could add a modifier over the retractable lens that would change, make it wide or telescopic or whatever, telephoto, I should say. And it had manual control, so you could control like your exposure triangle, which would be, you know, your f-stop, your aperture, and your shutter speed. These are all things that you adjust. The camera is like, you know, on your phone or like on a camera you have, it has automatic features or like an auto feature. It does all those things for you. So it'll change your shutter speed or your f-stop or your ISO for you to make the picture look as best as it can be, as properly exposed. But on most medium to high-end cameras now, like you have what's called manual settings, where you're manually adjusting those elements of the exposure triangle to get the picture to look the way you want it to look. And the exposure just being, is it super bright, is it super dark, or is it well exposed in the middle? So yeah, I got that. And again, it was a little bit more serious than the Kodak camera I had. But from there I could start to learn like the real philosophy behind photography, the principles, the techniques.
When you got that camera, was that something that was on the forefront of
your mind? That's when it started to become more of an art form. And I still didn't know.
How old are you then?
I would have been 21.
Cool.
21, about to be 22.
Okay. During that time, were you also doing like still like the graffiti?
Oh yeah, like my main art at the time was, I was still doing graffiti, and I was doing a lot of graphic design work. A lot of
really? Like websites and shit?
Websites. I had taught myself Flash. I was doing like flyer designs, logo designs, and I was also just creating like my own art.
Did you study that while you were in college?
No, I picked that up just from, I had always been into like photo editing software and stuff.
I really loved Photoshop growing up.
Like, that's what I'm saying.
I actually wanted to be a graphic designer, when I was younger, and then I got, anyways. I got convinced into studying business. The
business was a better choice, man.
They were cool. The person that convinced me, it was like, graphic design is going to be way too much math.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm sitting here in like statistics classes and accounting classes.
I was like, picked the math version of that.
Let me tell you now.
Graphic design was cool, and in a lot of ways.
So sorry, you didn't study that?
I did not. No, I learned.
Do you mind sharing what you studied in college?
Sociology with a concentration in criminology.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna go to the FBI and.
We gotta touch back on that subject. Yeah, right. Because you also mentioned you were a secret detective.
I was in special investigations.
Special investigations.
Yeah. So. Yeah, when I was younger, I wanted to go into the FBI. They had this hostage and rescue team.
No way.
I wanted to do like profiling, but also be on this team. The mind of a very young, young man. And no,
it's tight. I love that ambition, man.
So I'd always wanted to do something like that because my dad was special forces in the Army, and I always just was like, I want to do something like that.
Yeah,
so,
hell yeah.
Again, like this kid with just all these ideas.
See your pops on that.
I'm like, I want to do that and carry on that sort of
legacy.
And anyway, I learned how to do.
It became more.
You were just getting side money at school. I was also working on computers at school. So like people would like basically tear their computers up with all types of. This is the age of torrents. You know what I mean?
I remember that. Ripping shit, like
LimeWire, Napster, Pirate Bay.
Yeah.
And this is also too where like internet porn has become like a real thing, but it was all laden with just malware and virus. So yeah, I was like, bro, I was doing everything to make extra money in college. Bro, I was painting hats and skateboards. I was working on computers. I was doing graphic design. I was anything I could that I had like a get. I was cutting hair, bro. Literally
what the fuck?
everything.
That's what
bro.
I was saying. What don't you do? I'm glad I started off the podcast. I was like, what can't I say about you?
I've always been like that, man. I've always been like I have My mother told me, you have expensive taste, so you need to get out and go work. And that's what I did, bro. When I was younger and I learned how to DJ, it was so I could go play at parties and make money. So I think I had my first DJ gig. I was like probably 13, with literally playing vinyl, and then we had to put the aux cord to a CD, like a little disc man.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had my first DJ gig when I was like 13 years old. I have a picture of it somewhere. I gotta find
it. You do, because we're gonna have that motherfucker go right across the screen.
I got a picture of it somewhere. I'll see if I can find it. But yeah, like I literally.
So you've always had this
get money mentality, man.
Yeah.
But not just like trying to figure out how I could take the things I was interested in and
bingo
get money out of that. How could I turn like the things I love into a service or a product? And there's a lot of ways to do that, especially because my hobbies were. It was like my hobby was going fishing. Although you can make money out of going fishing, right? There's all types of things. But like my hobby were these things that directly translated to being able to make money out of them. So it's like I was an artist. Okay, people are gonna want stuff drawn, so I would draw people's tattoo ideas or whatever it was. Like I was always just figuring out something. So
you weren't tired? I feel like people are watching and they're like, damn, when does this motherfucker sleep?
Bro, I was like,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm like, this time I'm like 17, 18, 19.
So he was 20, like, ain't no need,
no,
right?
Never tired.
You're high energy.
Yeah, never tired, man. I was doing all that just trying to have a little bit of extra money. So anyway, we'll go back to the cameras.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was 2007.
21. You got your new camera.
Yeah, I got this like small. So I got into it and I really started learning about photography, man, buying photography for dummy books and stuff like that.
Oh, sick. Very cool.
This is another era of time, right, where everything was before YouTube was like you could learn everything on YouTube. We were all learning it from the For Dummies books, a thing. Yeah, it was just a really beautiful time where I was really invested in the art form of photography. So not just like documenting, but like how to take a properly exposed photo, how to manipulate the camera to do different things. And that was it, bro. From that point on, I was taking photos.
So that was that kind of like, all right, bet this is. I like this. Like
at that time, I was really learning about cameras. Later on, my photography would get better because I started learning about photographers and their lives and why they took photography. That's why I always tell people, like, learning about how to use the camera is great. Learning why you want to use the camera is like paramount to your development, bro. That is the key part. And I think to get there, it's great to understand why the people whose photography you love, why they take pictures. Because your why may be different, like on the face, but the deep-seated why of why you take pictures may be very similar, right? Like maybe I went through a trauma of someone dying, and that's why I engage with photography in a certain way. Maybe you went through the trauma of a relationship ending, and your grief is through the death of a relationship or a version of yourself that you were when this relationship was happening. Two different whys, but the base why is grief, right? Mm-hmm. The base why is like having to say goodbye to somebody, that person being you, or having to say goodbye to a loved one, right? Mm-hmm. And if a photographer I love was able to synthesize the death of their wife into how they move with this art form, or that being one of the things, maybe there's a way for me to understand now how to synthesize the death of my former self and using that as a basis for why I create or how I create, right? And so
that's sick.
That's just, there's tons of examples
that's
though,
sick.
But if you can understand people's whys, why did the greats take pictures? Then you can start to understand what are the things about your life or about yourself that resonate with that same sentiment of taking the experience of living and creating art out of that, and specifically creating art with the camera. And it doesn't have to be a photographer. Like it could be Picasso, right? It could be anybody. It could be like the mentality of an athlete might be the thing that makes you think, oh, okay, yeah, I really like one of my favorite athletes of all time is Mike Tyson, and I was fortunate to be young enough to watch him box, right? Like his prime. Oh. But also, it's not his boxing that makes him one of my favorite athletes. Like his boxing was incredible. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But most times that I'm like locked into Mike Tyson, it's being able to hear him talk about the evolution of himself. Mm-hmm. And like where he started, where he was, what he was, and the evolution to be the man that he is today. To me, that's super impactful. That makes him one of my favorite athletes of all time, is because of the man that he's evolved into and like how he articulates that experience. I take a lot away from that, and that impacts like how maybe I deal with different things in my life, or how I deal with this art form, or what I wanted, like how he was a great in his medium. His art form was fighting his art form was strategic warfare, like in the ring, right? How can I take his commitment to that art form? How can I take his mentality and how he approached it and dedicated himself to it, and how he was going to get better? What did he study? Who did he study? If you listen to Mike Tyson, he talks about boxing. He's talking about some of the history's greatest warlords and generals and military minds, right? He's taking from those people and what they've done and why they did what they did and their approach to battling, and he's taking that and pushing it into his approach and mentality to the boxing ring. And it was because of those things that made him be one of the greatest boxers of all time. So it shows you like it's important to know the history of the thing that you're trying to be great at. And if you can know that history, there is some through line from that history that you're reading about or watching or learning about to your current modern day experience with the same medium. Mm-hmm. So that was for me a huge thing, was just learning about photographers who I admired or whose work I really loved, and trying to understand, not trying to copy the work, because I think we all go there. This right. happens a lot. Like you want to just replicate.
Yeah, right.
But more so learning about their lives, who they were, why they created, and then trying to find through lines to my life, who I am, what do I have to offer from my life experience as a storyteller, to then what kind of art can I create from those experiences. And that was where I saw the biggest jump, from like the dummies books and learning how to operate a camera to learning how to make photography and how to make images and how to tell stories with the camera. Because right. I know the camera inside out. I can tell you whatever you want to know about it. But most of that stuff's not in my head at all when I'm taking pictures. I'm like trying to dive into what is the emotional experience that I'm having right now, mm-hmm. and how can I capture that with the camera is right. the emotional experience I'm having. Right. Like everything else is just in my opinion, a moot point.
Right.
And which is why you'll see a lot of photography that's good, but it will have no impact on you.
Right.
You won't feel shit when you look at it.
Right.
You will not feel a thing, because you can just scroll down and find another image that looks
just like it, right?
Feels just like it, mm-hmm. looks just like it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing there. But for all intents and purposes, it is a great image, right? Like it's sharp and the light is good and the model is beautiful, yeah. and but it doesn't impact you.
Right.
And I think that's mainly because people are trying to like either replicate, or they're not creating from inside themselves. The creation process is not starting from inside. Art takes a lot of honesty. It takes brutal fucking honesty. And being a storyteller takes a lot of honesty. And if you can't meet the medium with that level of honesty, then you can create things, but they're not usually going to be very impactful.
Man, that's incredible, dude. That's like a lot. That's so powerful. That's so heavy. It's so nice to hear that through these other people, these photographers that you admire, through their struggles, through their internal wars, if you want to call it that, would you say that being able to see them come through their own, it inspires you then to also be yourself, be vulnerable, to pull that person out, and then, because then that really gives your art its flavor.
I think sometimes things lack soul, and that we all have some kind of soul to us, to be honest enough with yourself to meet that part of yourself, and then be courageous or stubborn enough to pull that part of yourself out and expose it out to the world. That takes a lot, and not everybody's willing to do that. Not everybody can do that. I think this is the plight of an artist, right? This is why artists have like such difficult lives. To make the art that you need to make, like you have to expose the most vulnerable part of yourself. You have to be open to the world, and the world is fucking tough, bro. Like the world is hard, it's ruthless, it's brutal, it's all these things. But then you can't access the beautiful parts about the world, right? You can't just pick and choose. Like, yeah. Oh, okay, I'm gonna be open to the beauty. No, if you're open to the world, you're open to the world, and the world offers that. It offers an immense amount of beauty and things that deeply connect with what it is to be a human being and to live and to exist and to be interconnected with the universe. All that fluttery stuff. It is also, you'll also directly meet tragedy, grief, heartache, the disturbing, brutal nature of the human condition. You can't pick and choose, and that could be a lot. And the more an artist is open to the world, like the more vulnerable they are to all the other stuff too. And so I think the life of an artist is a hard one. You cannot create compelling art if you're not open to the world and you're not thinking about the world, the state of it, the condition of existence. Like you can't be a good artist and just float around in a bubble.
Right. Can't pick and choose what it is that
you have to be open to everything. And then part of what your job is as an artist is to ingest all of it. Excuse me. And then you have to ingest all of it and then come out with something. Mm-hmm. And that is tough. Like that.
It's hard to put yourself all out there.
It's hard to put yourself out there, and the world is tough. Like one thing that a lot of people can do is like decide, like they can shield off or be like, all right, I'm not gonna be open to all this. I can just focus in my lane. But I think to be a good artist, you have to be open to it.
Yeah.
And when you're open to it, again, like it hits you. Artists struggle with depression all the time. Even trying to qualify if they're good or not, because we all know there's not a direct correlation between being a good artist and being a well-paid or gainfully employed artist, right? Mm-hmm. Like you could be an amazing artist and be broke as fuck. Be an amazing artist and be poor, very broke, not able to make a living. Right. And you could be a okay or not good artist and be getting $200,000, $300,000 murals and doing projects with big brands and all that. Like sometimes it's just about how do you sell yourself or what connections you have or whatnot. So I think there's a lot of that, right? Like an artist in a way is constantly evaluating themselves in connection to in their art, in connection to their ability to survive off of it, because we're trained to believe
God, that must be such a struggle, right? It's I want to put out like me, I want to put out what it is that I have in here, I want to spew it out into my artwork, but at the same time is I need to make a living too.
I gotta pay my bills. And even that, like you could even be a working artist and then that's a struggle too.
Right.
Because like maybe you're paying your bills, but it's not getting commission to do what you love or the things that you're inspired to do. And so being an artist has its own unique set of tough circumstances.
May I ask if it's okay with you, if we can get on a personal tip? I think I was reading on one of your posts on Instagram. It was a post from December 11th, 2020, and you were discussing imposter syndrome, overcoming depression. And as an artist, it's difficult not to look at your peers or cohorts or people around you and be like, compare yourself.
Yeah.
Was there a moment where it was like heavy, tough, and you were able to step back, see where you were at, and surpass that?
Yeah, like 2020 was crazy, right? So many things were happening at the time, and a sister who you knew well died in 2020. I was a new dad, so like right after Brittany passed in August, my youngest daughter was born in October, like early in October. So it was like this collision of two very different life experience, death and birth. Right. You know, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, so we're locked down. I was transitioning from being a detective to just back to civilian life. Just going through it and there was just so many like major transitions happening in my life, and trying to be an artist, a photographer, moving on. At the time I was thinking about moving to LA.
Brandon, how does one not lose his mind?
When I tell you, one of my biggest fears at the time was, and still, this is like a phobia of mine. It's like losing my mind is a phobia of mine.
Sure.
So I'm like, what happens when you just lose your mind? Do you even ever know it?
Do you know that you lose your mind? Are you conscious of the fact that you lost it?
Yeah, and I think at the time I knew I knew I was under a lot of different pressure and experiencing a lot of different emotions, and I'm like, man, I feel like I can weather all this, but I'm like, what if my mind just breaks one day?
Right. Just wake. Right.
Yeah. Like, what if it just breaks one day, and to be somebody like me, value my mind. I think we all do, but I got to truly value my mind and having autonomy over thought and being able to
choose the proper mind.
Yeah. Like to me, it's a horror story, bro. Yeah. Like for your mind to break, to me, is a horror story.
Right.
And so I just had this fear. I'm like, one day, bro, I'm just gonna be crazy one day.
Do you mean in a sense like fuck, like you've had so much resilience, you had so much like awareness of like your thoughts, your conscious thoughts, like what you're telling yourself, what your affirmations,
like
how you perceive things.
There was all that, but then I also understood, okay, in my life, like I've seen or experienced like a great deal of trauma.
Yeah.
And ingested even other people's trauma,
Sure.
right, as of my time when I was in law enforcement, like literally injecting myself into other people's like deep trauma. And then the trauma I was experiencing myself, I was just like, man, like how, I feel resilient, but like how resilient am I? And will I even know it when it happens? So I just had, had that fear. But no, yeah, depression was a real thing. And all the way, there was a point in time where I was like deeply suicidal, dog. Like I was just like, and it wasn't because I was like sad or anything. I think it was a really clear point for me, because I was like, man, sometimes like wanting to not be here anymore just is fatigue. It just feels like fatigue. You don't feel sad or, oh, the world is like so bad to me. Just, God, I'm fucking tired.
Feelings are fucking, bro.
Yeah,
I feel
you're just like
yeah.
I am tired.
Yes.
And I remember that point. I haven't shared this with a lot of people, but there was a point in time, man, where I felt like that very acutely one day, man, very acutely.
I could just rest.
I was just like, man, I'm tired. I'm done. And I remember trying to figure out the words to write like in a letter. So like wherever in the house I decided to kill myself at, like my wife and my daughters wouldn't walk in. So I just wanted to write a letter compelling enough for them just to call the police to like that they didn't have, because I didn't want to leave them with that. Without the image, just don't come into this space. Just get the police. I'm trying to figure out like how to say this. What, my wife is stubborn, man. So I'm like, what can I say to put in this thing, man? And
she seems very, she holds down.
Like
because I know every time I holler at you, I'm like, let me check with the missus first.
Yeah, she would for sure.
She seems like a great rock.
Yeah, and has helped me in so many ways, and just developing and growing. And so I'm trying to figure this out. Like, what can I write? Because I'm like, I don't want to do this no more. And as I'm doing that, man, I get a random check-in from my pops, like a random text from my dad, man, and we were like just talking and I just told him, like, I'm like, Pops, I'm tired, man. And I didn't tell him like where I was at. Just talk to me, man. It was a really good conversation. And this was like shortly after he and I were having, like, have father and son issues,
misunderstandings,
that type of shit. Like this was a time where there's a lot going on in my family in general. Yeah. And
so he texted you, and
just texted me out the blue. No, I never even called, man.
So it was a kind of
back and forth text, but it was just like, it was a good, like the conversation was good enough to where it's just like, gave me a minute to just sit there and come out of that moment, man. And that shit really just stopped everything for long enough for me to just go, all right, man, what am I thinking? And then I think if anybody who has dealt with being suicidal, then there's like this guilt that you have for feeling like selfish, feeling like really guilty. Oh, like how could I think about leaving everyone with that type of trauma? And at the time, my family had been through enough trauma, especially with losing my sister and then having these two kids. I was just like, man, all right. I wanted to start getting deeply invested in the ways in which I could have a impact on my life for the better that would stop me from getting to lows like that. And yeah, man, I was going through it. Had been injured for a while and wasn't able to work out like I wanted to. And when I'm not working out, I'm eating trash and just like staying up late and just not sleep. So all this stuff. And I think about it when I'm not feeling that great. What things are you doing that will solidify, or what ways are you helping yourself feel good? If you're eating bad shit, if you're sleeping 2 hours a day, if you're fucking on edibles or smoking weed all the time, or you're not getting out and at least walking. If you can't go into the weight room, like, are you walking? You get on a bike, you get in sunlight, what things are you doing that we know, based off studies, we know can at least lead you towards the direction of feeling better? And I started just trying to get committed to doing those things. Are you practicing like gratitude, like looking at the things that are good in your life?
Well, how old are you here?
Man, this was I'm 39 now, so 36.
Yep.
37.
Yep.
And yeah, just having that moment where it was like, you can't just like work and hustle and grind and try to do all these things all the time. You can't have this mentality of I'm gonna just sleep less than everybody else and do. So while they're sleeping, I'm working. Blah, blah, like this idea that, and we get sold that too.
Yeah, we really do.
We get sold that.
Bashed into our head.
Sold that shit. If you're not a millionaire and you're getting more than
what are you doing? What you sleeping for?
Yeah, like,
stupid.
But it was like, what's the point of any of that, man? If I still want to kill myself, what's the point of any of that if I can't be a positive person inside my household? Or if I'm drinking all the time and just like, what's the point of any of that?
Yeah.
And I really started to try to get centered back into that. emotionally getting centered into letting go of shit that I don't have no control. I don't have control of other people.
Yeah.
So I gotta let
God,
go.
that was a big lesson.
That's a tough one,
big
man.
lesson to finally swallow and digest for sure. But isn't it so helpful?
It's helpful, man. Everybody has to go off and live their own life. You can want for everybody these things that you think is good for them, but it is their life.
Yeah.
And just letting go of a lot of different things, man, and refocusing myself in things that were going to be good for me. Like I said, being more active, letting go of the cannabis, letting go of alcohol, trying to sleep, like actually going to fucking bed, getting off, getting off of 2K and Call of Duty, which I love. Like I love gaming.
It's fucking fun,
I love
dude.
gaming, but
I think as people who are like, I think you and myself, I think we thrive off of that high energy moments, right? You're playing these games that intensify. You feel the sensations
and the camaraderie too,
the camaraderie,
right? Like we grew up playing
absolutely.
sports and being involved, and so that's
Kicking
always
ass. Kicking ass
man.
is fun.
I try to tell people all the time, especially if you're with a dude who is into gaming and like their life doesn't present itself where they're able to go out all the time and hit the basketball court or the tennis court or go out and play pickup soccer games, like have that camaraderie that we've had most of our entire lives.
Right.
I'm like, that's what it is. I remember getting on these games, man, and just like kicking it with my boys and like talking about life and what's new and what's this and what's that. And I was like, man, if you break this down, this is really like what we would do on the court.
Yep.
It's what we would do on the field.
Right.
It's that same thing. That's all good and great, but it's also at the same time like I'm staying up till 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I got kids, which means I still gotta. Doesn't matter what time I go to bed, I still gotta get up and do my part, make lunches, or it's like if I'm on.
Can't wake up and be like, today I don't
Nah, you still gotta be on. Girl still gotta have her hair done. Yeah. The lunch has to still be made. Yeah. There's just still things that need to be done, and I'm still working a 9 to 5 on top of running my own business. So it's like there's a lot of things to get done. Yeah, I love gaming, love it, and I'm always missing it when I'm not doing it. But I know once I get in that cycle of doing it, it gets bad for me, man. Yeah. It gets bad for me because I would still handle everything, but I'll sleep less. So all these things are like playing into things that are not making me like the best version of myself spiritually, mentally, and I look at it and I'm like. Yeah, bro, like on these edibles, I'm eating like all crazy, eating crazy times of night. I'm gaining weight, I'm drinking, I'm smoking, I'm not sleeping, you're doing all these things. Of course you want to like not be here anymore. You're not doing anything to help your body feel good, to help your mind feel good, to help your spirit feel good.
Right.
And yeah, so for me, those things are essential now. I finished doing this move, and it's thrown me off of my cycling routine.
Yeah, I have, cycling, biking?
Yeah, because I cycle a lot when I'm a little bit further away from my gym, and just there's things that have to be done right now to still get settled in this house, and so it's thrown me off a little bit. So even now, I'm like, oh man, like I can feel it. But I'll do some stuff at the house, man. I got some dumbbells, like
push-ups,
get some push-ups, some dumbbells, a jump rope. And even that, just like having that feeling like, oh yeah, I did that, took care of myself, took care of my body. Let's get after the day. That type of stuff is huge, and it's things that I have baked in because I'm like, I love going to the gym and all that, but it's not some superficial thing where I want to have the 6-pack and this and that or whatever. I want to be healthy. I definitely want to be strong. I can't imagine like walking around the world feeling I just lack the basic strength to defend myself.
Right.
But also it keeps my mind intact.
Yeah.
That's the biggest benefit. Yeah. It's like that keeps my mind intact. It allows me to have the endorphins and just this knowing that I have done something positive for myself, and it wasn't like an easy thing, right? Like
you had to fight for it.
I had to fight for it. It was difficult. Didn't feel like going. That set was hard. That extra rep was hard. Putting that weight on instead of cruising in this weight range was hard. Whatever it is, but you feel good about it. And all these things have been studied. It helps.
Yeah.
Eating good helps.
Yeah.
Sleeping better helps.
Yeah.
Working out helps the mind, man. All these things like keep my mind intact.
These laws, right? Damn near.
Yeah. And you create a routine of that, man. And for me, it was essential. So I'm not saying, okay, I feel like $1 million every day because I do X, Y, and Z or whatever. But I'll say it helps.
Yeah.
A lot, man. It helps a lot. And that's what I'm in the season of. What are the things I can do to help myself to be a better version of myself? And then like, how can I get that out to other people? How can I help somebody else? How can I bring somebody else into something that they're trying to get into? How can I teach somebody something? How can I support somebody on something they're trying to do? What are the ways I can help people? But if I'm barely making it from day to day, I can't help nobody. They always talk about that pouring from you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right.
Right? Like you cannot fill up somebody else's cup
when you ain't got
when
shit
you ain't got
yours.
nothing in yours, right? And so
Right.
it's like, you have to have that balance, man. So that's why I think I'm always just trying to find out, like, what's the balance. And I think the hardest part still is the sleep.
Yeah.
But now if I get 5 or 6 hours, I'm like, all right, cool.
Feel good.
Versus I'm telling you, man, there was times I was averaging like 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
2.5 hours of sleep a day.
Did you feel like ready to go?
It's fine.
Yeah.
To an extent, but I was fine. That was my normal. My body was like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
But physically, like hormonally, it's throwing off all types of things. If I'm still up, I'm probably at some point getting hungry and eating late, and just all the implications that come from there, man, are bad. And then your body never has the time to actually recover.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I'll go to the gym like once or twice or whatever, just some lackluster shit, and then even that lackluster whatever is not getting any recovery time added to it because I'm still it's just like these things compiling on top of each other.
Yeah. Would you say 2020 is the moment where kind of this kind of realization, this click, this?
No, I would say 2020 was still pretty tough. This click really happened in probably like 2023.
Love it.
2023 is when I really felt like I had to make some changes for myself that were going to give me longevity, both mentally and physically and spiritually. And I've been still on that grind.
Yeah.
You know, still on that grind. And then, and funny enough, it's like 2023 is when I got more deeply involved.
Crazy.
Yeah, that was
right there.
That was a big, even it's like a big sister / mentor, Karen, she was formerly with, and she brought so many of us into that community. Like she just had an eye for people and bringing the right people in to do the right things at the right time. And
so you got rid of all these bad habits.
I was slowly getting rid of them. Like there was habits
it's
that
always
were,
like that. You shed a little by little.
That trip, so like she invited me to come to Germany. I want to say that was 2020. Yeah, I think it was like 2023. She invited me because that's where Leica's headquarters are. Every year they do this end of the year celebration of photography.
This Leica thing came about with her.
So she invites me out for that, and yeah, man, like I just got to be somewhere different for a while. Got to experience photography from this different viewpoint. And I just got to get away for a minute, man. I was like, I needed that trip so bad. And I came back feeling, I won't even just say revitalized, but I came back feeling like, all right, refocused.
Yeah.
And I feel like that trip was like a life-saving trip because it was this break that I desperately needed away from all these things that were familiar to me. And it was also like this validation that even though photography was feeling real blah for me at the time, it was like,
it was feeling what?
Blah. It's like not feeling strong about it. What I was creating, the work I was creating was being valued by somebody. It was being valued by a company like Leica, which has this like really strong history of just some of the most amazing photography and photographers in the history of the medium.
Hell yeah.
And so yeah, it changed some things for me. And at the time I started shooting with the rangefinder, which slowed my process down. And that was huge, man. Just the art of slowing down, man, was huge.
Wow.
And then you fast forward.
I felt that in my core though when you said that.
Just slowing down, man, did so much. And
what's that? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
When you slow down, I think you can approach things with more intention, and you can really see. You can see more things. I won't say you see everything, but more things, and what you can see informs your perspective. And I feel like at the time, photography was much like the rest of my life, like rushing through things, just always on a scramble, rushing. And not having a ton of, having direction, but like the direction being like, be the difference between a bird shot from a shotgun just going everywhere or a slug, right where you put it.
Yeah.
And the impact, right? If you're familiar with guns, it's like bird shot hurts. And it'll mess something up, but like a slug through something, it's a direct impact, puts a hole through it. Like it's very powerful.
Right.
It's very potent. It doesn't go everywhere. It goes into a very select spot. And I feel like at the time, and they're both moving the same direction, right? They're moving to the same target. But for me, like I was bird shot. I was moving in a direction, but I was hitting like all these spots in a region. And what I needed to do and what I was trying to do was refine myself and cut down into being more like a slug. And to where like I'm hitting the target in a very specific spot, and once it hits that target, the target is done. Yeah. Because it was so powerful, the impact that I had right there in that region. So that was a very hard process. It's still hard. I have to rein myself in still. Like when I start becoming like birdshot,
you catch yourself.
Bring it back here. And so, yeah, I just have tried to approach my life more that way.
So your craft damn near is helping you also outside of
Yeah,
like, in
yeah,
your
absolutely.
world.
Because it makes me sit down and do all types of things. Like I spent a great deal of last year working on a photography book, which was a whole process.
Is that the one you discussed with me about the editor that you met? It was the European guy.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the publisher is in London,
Yes.
and we had met when I was in London at the end of last year, and he and I had met again. We met here at the San Francisco Photography Art Book Fair, and we had a mutual guy, Todd Heido, who I mentioned, the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a mutual friend for both of us, and he made an introduction. And I happened to be in London for some work, and we met up and had a great time, man. Good conversation. He was like, "Yeah, let's do this." It was a trip because I had shopped the book to another publisher, like another really good publisher, and at first, like they were very interested, seemingly very interested, and like active in the conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just died out. I still to this day don't know what happened.
No way, really?
Yeah, and like they put out amazing work.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
an amazing publisher. They put out amazing work, and they're good people connected to the photography community. But I have no clue. Like to this day, bro, I have no clue why. Like literally, just would not get a response back from them. And so,
Do you have a hard copy of this of like your photo?
not yet, but it's in production like
Yeah,
right now.
okay.
Like it
Holler at your boy. We
Oh,
gotta
come
make that
on,
thing
man.
pop.
Yeah.
I need that.
Yeah, oh for sure. So like that was another like I was like, damn, like
Kinda,
what happened? I'm like, damn, I thought
Yeah.
things were gonna go well with this publisher who seemed interested. And mind you, there was no promise or anything,
Yeah.
but you're having a like you could tell,
Yeah,
okay, let's do something.
Yeah.
So it felt like a setback. I was like, damn, maybe the work wasn't good, or maybe I
Those
should
are the
revisit
thoughts
this.
that
Yeah,
come
like all the
immediately.
natural thoughts you
Yeah.
have. And even too, I'm very much I try not to take when things don't go well, like in a interaction or relationship. I usually try to figure out, okay, like what did I do, or is there some place where I misstepped or whatever. And I was like, no, everything was cool.
Yeah.
And
Do you also, does your mind go, does it gravitate towards, let's say, okay, it was still something like you needed to experience from the universe, your life, that is, yo, this is still a step closer to.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
huge
even
monumental
like being
publishing.
even talking to this publisher and them saying, yeah, send it to us. That was huge.
Sick as
'Cause
fuck.
this is my first like formal book.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talented photographers who don't have that. Like their first book has to be self-published. In fact, I was going to self-publish this book. So even to be talking to a publisher that
Just
was at
the
this
intrigue
level,
alone, right?
that was dope. Yeah, I think everything happens for a reason because the publisher in London, like they're like the number one publisher for photography books online, and they are also like very extremely reputable. They go out into the community as far as like photography community and the photo book community. Like the photo book community has its whole own thing.
No word.
And so they're out there and they're doing their thing, and they're also like deeply connected into that community, and they represent so well. And so it was like, that's where it was meant to go. Like it was meant to go through that process.
Yeah.
The first one wasn't where this particular book was supposed to be. And I have to accept that. That's why I say you have to accept that you can't control
Right.
other people. And I could have just been like, oh, all right, maybe like the book's not good. Maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should just go self-publish.
Fuck.
But I continued on this mission of thinking like, nah, I want this book to come out with a publisher who can get it out into the world, because I feel like this work is good. I feel like the work deserves to have, and I was like, I'm not going to publish this book until I get to a publisher who I, one, respect and enjoy the work that they're putting out and want to have published this book, but two, until that relationship like comes to be.
Yeah.
And I chilled for a little bit. I kept working on it. I had Kieran, who I mentioned before. She helped me do this for the first edit of the book. Some greats, man, like some great photographers. My boy Demondre Ward put his eyes on this.
Hell yeah.
He's an extremely talented photographer here from Oakland, and Alex Ramos, who's again an amazing photographer, but also like a extremely well-versed curator for photography books at a Leica store in San Francisco.
I love that.
He had put his eyes on this, man. Paris, she's the gallery curator in LA. She had input, like just put some input on this, man. Todd Heido, who I've mentioned a couple times. Jamel Shabazz, whose photography changed my life. Finding his photography book. This was a long time ago. I found a photography book of his that changed my life.
Who is this guy?
Jamel Shabazz.
Okay.
Like just an amazing photographer out of New York, has done groundbreaking work just photographing the communities in New York back in the day when hip hop was just being born, man. So his work is crazy. And somebody I've been able to get to know over the years. He became just like a mentor of mine. But just have I had like different people for different reasons look at the first iterations of the book, and they helped me craft it. So even before it got to the publisher, I was able to deliver over a really clear idea of what I wanted the book to be. Then the publisher got to it, and usually publishers will ask for a little bit more, some more photos or like an archive of photos, and they'll play around with things as well. And then they did their thing to it, and it was just like this beautiful collaboration of ideas and watching what my initial idea is, plus these photos, because I could send them a huge archive, not a huge, but a decent archive of photos to pick from that I felt were still in this world, you know, that we were creating with this book. And then they did their thing. And so it was just like, it was a long process. And I feel like everything from the initial feeling like ghosted by this other publisher to getting into conversation in London with this really major publisher as well, to landing this edit that was different than what I initially had sequenced and edited myself. It all happened the way it was supposed to happen. And that's this idea too, that you can have your idea and you can be moving in a direction, but being adaptable. Yeah. Being adaptable and going, okay, all right, whatever happens, it's not going to work with that publisher, but let's keep the idea. We're still moving in the same direction. Keeping that mentality and still believing in myself, even when it was like hard. I'm like, damn, like maybe the book wasn't what I thought it was. Like maybe everybody else who's looked at it, they weren't seeing, maybe because again, this publisher that was interested, like they're a great publisher. Yeah. They put out really good work. Right. There's no doubt about that. Right. Like they put out really great work, and they're also very active in the publishing space. But I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like everything also made me want to get into publishing. So it's like right now.
Okay, see how that's so crazy, dude. Like the catalyst to have, like, bro, you know, like all of this kind of.
It's all part of that process, right? And so, yeah, I mean,
it never turns out how you expect. It always turns out better.
Yeah, I think it always turns out better, man. But again, you have to be open to it.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why I try to tell people when they ask me.
Because you could have been like, I'm dead. This is horrible. I'm so hurt. I can't. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and the publishing process is a mysterious one. If you don't come from that, or if you don't already have books published, bro, it's a mysterious one to like try to figure out, okay, what are people looking for? And different publishers are going to want to publish things at different times for different reasons.
Sure.
So even like with this other publisher, I wasn't thrilled about the ghosting. I don't know what that was about, but them, like the book might not have been right for them at that moment too.
Yeah.
Like,
it doesn't mean it was bad.
Doesn't mean it was bad. Right, it doesn't even mean it wasn't for them, but like maybe it doesn't work within what they have at the moment. And a lot of times, like people don't get it. Like these publishing companies, no matter how big they are, they're small. Yeah. Sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 people working to make everything happen. So so I just had to really stay true to myself, true to my vision. And I had to be malleable to what the universe was going to throw out there. Malleability and survivability are linked. And like when people ask me about like how I've been able to be so many different things in my life, or I always say I'm just open to what the world might present. I'm never too fixed to this specific thing being like my identity.
Yes.
I'm always going to be who I am.
I love it.
Always going to be who I am.
Yeah.
But I can't get too fixed to photography being my identity, right? If I get in an accident one day, Dr. What's his name? Why am I tripping, man? From Marvel.
Like he fucks up his hands.
Yeah, like
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
If my hands get fucked up and I can't do photography,
then what
photography in the way that I've always thought I could do it, then am I still an artist? Am I still me? Am I still right? Like all these different things. Like so I try not to get. I just understand. In my 39 years, I've seen some of the craziest things. And I understand the world is not predictable. And so I try not to get too fixed to these things being my identity, but more so what are the spiritual and emotional things that you can't take away from me? Yeah. How are those linked to my identity? How is my identity woven into that? And then everything else is like right now I could be a photographer. Maybe 5 years from now, I'm a filmmaker, which I mean, like I'm doing both. Like I'm writing films and making films, but like maybe 10 years from now, I really get into a specific type of painting, and that's the one thing that everybody ends up knowing me for.
Right, and everybody's crazy. And
so it's like just these things. Life, if you're open to it, man, life can present you with things you never knew were even possibilities. Much like photography for me, if you would have asked my 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old self.
Right.
Hey, one day people are going to know you for an art form. Which will it be? photography would have been at the bottom of my list, like beneath sculpting and
That's beneath sculpting.
Yeah,
no.
like you could have been. Yeah, it's photography would have been at the bottom of the list. And ironically, now, man, that is like the main medium that people associate with me. And even when I tell people I used to do music, because like I had the Rough Draft moniker when I was making beats. Was
that your music? I was gonna ask you.
I made music under Rough Draft, man. So I got a ton of people that knew me for that. Every blue moon, I'll get a DM or a message or email. Somebody like, I see you do photography. They're like, didn't you make music back in the day? Are you saying Rough Draft? I'm like, yeah, that's me. I used to make music. Life is just, if we're fortunate, man, life is long, and when life is long, it has so many versions of you in it, man. There's so many seasons that you'll go through, and you can't be too mad when the season comes to an end, because another season that has its own beauty and challenges is coming right after it. Again, for me, I think it's just being open to recognizing that every season is going to have the difficult parts about it. It's going to have the beautiful parts about it. Summertime is going to be hot, right? Like, it's the difficult part about it, but it also makes for being outside and doing stuff beautiful, man. The winter is going to be cold, but man, it's just those opportunities for the Christmas when it comes, and those opportunities to be cozied up in spaces with friends and with family. There's something beautiful about everything. There's something that's hard about everything, and being able to embrace that duality, I think, is important to. Yeah.
I ran into a post yesterday on Instagram, and it was talking about like the healthiest minds, the healthiest mentality to have is a flexible mind, a flexible personality.
Yeah. I agree with it, man. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Do you think that's one of the spiritual, we were saying, like, things that can't be taken away from you, right? Like, do you think that's that spiritual trait, is that can't be taken away from us? Is that what it is?
I'm of the mind to say, like, you could probably take everything from a human being, to be honest, right? But how difficult it is, how deeply woven into the fabric of your being are certain tenets of existence, could be very, very hard, right? If I have all the faith in the world, in God, right? Yeah, you could like take everything from me and maybe I'll still believe. You could take my family, you could take my health, you could take everything. And if I have really strong faith, then you still haven't been able to strip that from me. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be an incredible bit of faith, right? We have all types of stories in the Bible that talk about that type of faith that's just, dang, like they were really, they were real tough, lost it all, man. But I would say those parts of me are some of the deepest, just the deepest actual things that are connected to my state of being. And so I would imagine to take those things away from you would take a lot. And so, I don't know, man. It's trying to find purpose.
Yeah. Shit, like, fuck, I don't know, man. Like that, the flexibility and not digging yourself into a hole after, thinking that you were gonna get this book published by whoever, so, and then like you being able to maneuver in that, like that takes a lot of, I think, spiritual fortitude. So I think it's incredible, bro. I think that's amazing.
I appreciate it, bro.
Very awesome. I wanted to talk about your work. Like, how would you? I see your Instagram, and it's sick. Like, your work is dope as fuck. Bro. Like, I really appreciate it. I feel like seeing it, I feel like you encapsulate. It almost seems biographical.
Yeah, in a way, there is a deep connection, though.
It just feels like you encapsulate so much of a life. Like we were talking about earlier, life is so fleeting. Yeah. But you capture so much in a photo of a human being. How would you describe your work to people? Is it all? Because
I would describe it as probably deeply invested in like the art of existing.
Yeah, I love that.
I love to, just like when I first picked up a camera and was just fucking around, I love to document people, man. And I love to document life. Yeah. Because I think even, I don't have to have a person in the frame to be documenting humanity. Yeah. Everything that we touch, we build. Everything that grows old that we needed and have discarded. These are all evidence of life. And I think that's what I'm always looking for, is evidence of life and in non-conventional ways. I think when I probably started getting a bit of a name for myself in photography, I was doing a lot of street portraits. And that's what people were knowing me for. And those were great, and I love that. And that was a whole nother story and a whole nother thing. But then I felt like, all right, these are great. I love these, but I want to go further, and I want to go deeper in the sense of not just capturing a really poignant like moment or memory with a person, but there was a time where it was like I want to capture like the feeling of that moment and try to translate that to the people who will then look at these photos. And so that was, I think, a very important stage in like my evolution as a photographer, because I had a deeper understanding of what it is I wanted. So from there, got to just studying more, not just photography, but different forms of art. Got really into impressionism and abstraction, and I wanted to figure out a way to take my love of photographing people and taking portraits, and then fuse that through the lens of impressionism and fuse that through the lens of abstraction, and start to create images of people that felt like the person more so than it was like reflecting back there, like a perfect image reflected back. And sometimes that is a really clear image. To get the feeling of a person is a really clean image, but other times it's like it's shooting it through an object and connecting with the person through their reflection off of a window or a bottle or whatever, right? Or it's catching the in-between moments. I think I love that. Like my favorite photos are like capturing someone in between from one photo to the next. That's where I think like some of the best moments come from. And yeah, I mean, I think always being invested in trying to go further and try new things. I still have a strong sense of design from my graphic design days. If you look at my photos, you can see like the way that a designer balances out the designs they're working on. I usually balance out images that way. But yeah, I don't know, it's one of those things where it just brings me joy. It connects me with parts of myself that are not always the easiest to connect with.
Yeah.
It helps me have conversations in it helps me articulate ideas and things better sometimes through these images. Yeah, and I just want to, I know I have this idea of where I want to be. Can't always formulate what that is to relate to other people, but there's times of taking images and they feel just like where I want to go.
That's tight.
And I'm like, yep, I need to figure out how to do that more.
And when you say like you want to go as an artist,
yeah, like where I would like to be in the work that I've created. And so by where I want to go, it's like it's not like a mark like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to go here, I want to go there, but more so how would I like the collective body of work that I leave here when I die? How would I like that to feel? And like what kind of images and stories do I need to tell to create that?
You got to share one of those with me.
I'll send you some.
I would love to.
Yeah, I'll send you some of my favorite ones that are like, yo, that's it.
Because to hear you describe it like with such passion, and then for me to actually see what it is that you're talking about, because you're saying like, right, it's like you don't get it every time, but when you get it, you're like.
I feel like when you get it, to me, there are photos that you're meant to take, and like it's like predestined photos. Yeah. Predestined moments that you're meant to intersect with. Yeah. And those are gold. Like when you have them, you just know. And when you take that photo, and yeah, it's just such a good feeling.
I love it, bro. I love what you're doing. I really do. Can I ask you about, there was a couple of things that I seen on your Instagram, because you doing good on time, man?
Yeah, I just want to do a quick time check. Make sure
good. You're absolutely good. I know you got your family. Said, am I saying that right? It was a woman.
Oh, yeah. I said
that seemed like a powerful project. I thought maybe.
Man, yeah, I was actually just looking at those photos a couple of days ago, man. That was a super impactful photography. That was an impactful shoot, man. There's a woman here in Richmond named Mimby. Mimby, she used to own the restaurant here in the Point, and it was a Salute's, I think it was, an Italian spot there in Point Richmond. And Mimby is from Ethiopia. Used to be an actress there, actually.
Really?
And just a beautiful soul, man. Mimby she's amazing, and anybody who has crossed paths with this woman, man. I was just thinking about Mimby. I think about Kieran, who I mentioned, and like these just powerful women, like on the heels of International Women's Day. Like these are women like just doing huge things. So one of the big things she's an advocate for is victims of domestic violence in Ethiopia. in Ethiopia, like some other places, it's not uncommon for women to experience acid attacks.
Yeah.
And
I would hear about that shit when I was younger.
Yeah, so there's some parts of the world where that is the main way in which men want to victimize women. Is I don't know what it is, if it's trying to make it so they're undesirable for other people or just to take something from them. It's just, I don't know what kind of monster you have to be to really harm women in any way, but then to harm a woman to that degree just is
unimaginable.
It's
honestly.
unimaginable.
It's like, why? Yeah, because for me and you, we would
It's
never
so
feel
far
that
away.
urge.
Yeah, like that just to me is nuts. I can't, again, like you're just, to me, not even human.
Yeah. How did you get involved with that project?
Mimby, again, like she's a very big advocate for women who are domestic violence survivors, and I was one of the women who had survived an acid attack. She was in university out there, had left her abusive husband, and was studying. And yeah, he caught up to her and assaulted her with an acid attack.
That's just like literally somebody tosses acid in that person's face.
Yeah, tossed acid on her, and it just burned away a good amount of her face, blinded her, and it was just horrible, man. And meeting her was crazy because she was so kind and grateful and gentle, but not like in a meek way. Like she was just still had great faith, man. Like she still had so much faith and wasn't at all pessimistic. She wasn't timid. And it was just really beautiful to experience somebody like that, man. And they had, Mimby and Ata showed me her pictures prior to the attack, and just such a beautiful woman, man. Like I was at the end of this shoot, man. I was so impacted by her story and so upset with what had happened to her. I was like in tears in my car when I got out. Like, I just felt like once I was done, because I think when I'm photographing someone, like I'm with them, I'm on, like we're engaging, but once everything wore off and I was just like in the car, it was hard to see anybody have had to experience that. And then after meeting her and engaging with her, it was even harder that this really beautiful, and by her beauty, she was physically beautiful, of course, but by beauty, just her essence, like sitting with this human being and like just absorbing who she was, and even more so who she was even after experiencing something like this.
How she could still be so,
man, I just felt
positive.
Felt horrible, man. I felt very sad.
Like she didn't deserve it.
No one deserves it, but also you're just like, yeah, specifically you. Like you, this beautiful, like this earth angel, you did not deserve this. And also just anger, man, and like thinking about the man that did this to her, or the fact that this is a thing. Like this is a thing where men try to harm women in the worst way they can imagine by burning their face. They're not tossing acid at their hip, or they're specifically like targeting the place in which most of us first perceive someone's beauty, their face. And yeah, man, I think also he was a police officer, so I think like Mimby was fighting to make sure that the government went through with prosecuting him properly, because I think there was something that was inconsistent with what was happening based off what he had done, that essentially he wasn't being held accountable for it. But anyway, so I did a series of portraits with her, and again, that experience was just incredible. And I think in a lot of ways it always aimed at what I wanted to do with the camera, which was always to show people's humanity, to always respect their dignity, respect their humanity. I don't think you can. I heard a long time ago on this interview that someone was having I think this interview was from like the 40s or 50s, and they were interviewing somebody who had been a slave. They were born a slave.
What?
It could have been even earlier than that. Don't quote me on the time period, but the person had been born into slavery. And the interviewer was, the interviewee had basically said that there was a sickness that was had amongst white people because of the way in which they could do something like slavery, and in the way in which they could structure a society that lacked so much equality and was still so wrought with oppression. And in this specifically, the sickness was, it's attitude towards black communities and black people. And the interviewer had said, he says, not all of us. He's like, you really feel that way? Because I'm here, I'm interviewing you, and I'm an advocate. I want to help. I don't believe in any of those things, and I'm here. I want to do these interviews to help give you your humanity. And he said, but you can't. That's what I mean. That's the sickness. He's like, you can't give or take anyone's humanity. He said, I am just human.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you don't have the ability to give me that. You don't
like
have the ability to take it away from me. Yeah,
godly ability to bestow this upon me.
Yeah, he's like, you don't have. He's like, you can't.
Natural.
By my existing, I am. And I think about that too, as men, as we're trying to be advocates for women and be allies for women. In what ways are we bestowing this thing that we don't have to give?
Yeah,
you know,
right.
We're not here to save women, like we're here to make other men better. You know what I mean? That's what we should be doing.
Yeah,
but there's no way that women are smart and capable and resilient. Our focus should be on making men not feel like throwing acid in the face of a woman to decide not to be with him anymore is his right. It's his right to take something like that from someone. And I think also as men, then we also have to be ready to hold other men accountable when they do disgusting things to women, especially as a father of daughters too. I think about the things that I'm doing right now are impacting the culture of what it means to be a man, is impacting what a young man's relationship will be to masculinity and what it means to be a man. And if I'm out doing a bunch of toxic shit, if I'm not holding other men accountable for toxic shit, if I'm not trying to be better and show an example of something that's more positive, then I am contributing to a culture that's going to eventually run into my daughters. And I can't feel any kind of way about it if at this time now, when they're not dealing with I have a 12-year-old now, so I'm sure even that now at this point, the difference between girls and boys becomes more obvious. 12-year-old boys are starting to try to become young men. But for the most part, my girls are still young. They're not dealing with boys and men that way. But one day they will. And one day they'll be grown women walking around this earth dealing with men. Mm-hmm. Rather that be romantically, an employer, a colleague, or just a random guy on the street catcalling them, or somebody thinking that they have the right to put their hands on them or to take from them. So if I'm not doing things now, today, to impact that, I don't think I have too many legs to stand on tomorrow when my daughters are dealing with it.
Right.
And a lot of men don't even rationalize this. What do you have to complain when you've always been a terror in all these other ways? You've always been a negative and a toxic point of what masculinity is to all these women who've had to cross paths with you. Mm-hmm. So anyway, back to our story at hand. Like yeah, man, that one was a tough one. It always will be a tough one, but I just remember how I felt at the end of it. And it was, again, I had already been a cop and everything, and I was just like, I've seen a lot of bad stuff, right? But there was just something about being able to be so deeply engaged with her. Photography is such an intimate experience as well. Like, it requires for it to be done well, it requires a lot of connection, a lot of vulnerability. You learn so much about people, man. And not just about what they say, but how do they interact, engage, how do they look, how do they, just everything. Like, photography is an extremely revealing art form. And so, yeah, that was definitely a tough shoot for sure.
How did she come out feeling?
She loved it. She had a great time. She loved having her picture taken. She loved having her story put out there and told. And yeah, from everything, all accounts, she had a really positive experience. And I know that she had some surgeries some years later and had regained some of her sight back. And it's crazy. I had just been going through those photos a few days ago, and was thinking I need to call Mimby and just see where she's at, where us is at, and what's happening new.
Confirmation.
Just to get the life starts to move really fast, and yeah.
I'm sure she was happy that you were able to share her story and then also help, right? I'm sure other people that have experienced that same thing.
Yeah, I was honored to take those photos, and those photos were used later on to be part of her story, and that was more than enough for me, because again, I wanted to show her beauty in a way that really reflected like how beauty is. It's more than the flesh.
Yeah.
And this is another example how somebody can take. She was a very beautiful woman. I saw her pictures. Very like what we will commonly accept as a very beautiful person.
Yeah.
And her flesh was taken from her in that way. And but then being around her and just experiencing her personality,
you up with so much delight.
Man, she was still
joy.
So very beautiful because who she was as a person and her presence was beauty.
Yeah.
And that's what when I say some things you just people can't take from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was a great example of that. Another great example too. I'm sure people would go through that and think, how could God let this happen to me?
Right.
How could I? Why would I have to go through this? Why, and that wasn't her take on it, man. She was very resolved in her faith. Very resolved in her faith. And I just was in awe of her, man. I was in absolute awe of her. And another example of just like, man, women dealing in this world are just some of the most resilient and strongest people you'll ever find. Because there's strength that you can have about our way. We're mentally tough and pile through it and go through it, man. And physically tough and all that. That's all great. And that's important too. But imagine still having to go through and deal with all those things and maybe not having the same kind of physical strength, having the testosterone to hoorah yourself through everything. And at the end of the day, like we, as men, we still break.
Yeah.
Like with all as tough as we are and all that, we still break. We still have by far the highest rates of suicide. By far. Are women not going through pressure in life? Of course they are. You talk about just a resilient group of people who have even extra factors weighing on them. I don't worry about a man. I don't worry about breaking up with somebody and them throwing acid in my face. Never have. In all my years of dating, my years of being married, that never came across my mind. I don't walk out at night and think maybe somebody's gonna come nab me and try to sexually assault me or harm me or whatever. Like it doesn't cross my mind. You talk to a woman, talk to the women in your life, and you will. Oh yeah, of course.
I felt this fear constantly.
That's what I always.
Yeah,
that's
what
I walk
to think
around
about
with,
that. Really, to put yourself in their shoes when you say it like that, it's just like it's wild.
I'm telling you, man.
God, I would hate that. I would hate to walk outside and be like, shit, I gotta walk my dog at night, but it's like I'm so petite. Like,
yep, women think about that, but that's a part of it's such a common part of a woman's psyche that they don't talk about. Like they don't tell you, man. Babe, like I don't want to walk outside because they just don't.
Right.
You just don't go outside at that time of night because that's what
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where it's like that. It's just a resilient, very strong group of people, and being around her. I mean, I seen dudes just give up on life because their knee went out and now they can't go and play pro soccer or basketball or football anymore.
Right.
Imagine having the strength to leave an abusive partner and then them taking your face from you, taking your sight from you, and you're still going on. You're still like, nah, life is good. I'm still going back to school and I'm going like nothing's changed. I need
that type of mentality.
Man, nothing's changed, man.
That's a winner right there.
I even think about my sister, man. Brittany was still training to go to a marathon, and she was still getting her master's degree until like her last couple of weeks. Until she was literally hospitalized.
She was just not taking her foot off the gas.
She was like, life goes on. These are still the things that I was planning on doing.
Yeah.
So, that shoot had weighed on me a lot, but it was also very inspiring. Meeting her was inspiring. This is why I say some pictures you're meant to take. Because what I took away from that was way more than just some images, man. The experience with her was something I would go on to think about for the rest of my life.
You've done so much shit, man. I appreciate you as a person, as an artist. What could you give people, somebody who's also trying to pursue a passion? What advice can you give somebody, a young man, a young woman?
Don't take no for an answer, man. One of the best bits of advice I got from one of my best friends, who's a couple years older than me. So when I got into college, he was one of the older guys on the track team when I came to Northridge. And it was just like so inspiring to me still to this day.
This is just a buddy of yours?
Yep. He's like a brother.
When you were in track?
When I was running track, yep. And he's like a brother, like a big brother to me, man. And we had one conversation when I was still here. I was getting recruited to come there, and the coach had put us on the phone. He said, yeah, I think you guys should.
This was what, high school?
I was in high school, but he was already at the university I was going to go to. And man, we talked on the phone, and just like immediately I was like, oh, this guy's like family. And we've been that way since. That was 2003.
How did you guys get connected? The coach was
coach,
like, "Hey, you should
the
just
coach
talk
was
to
like,
him."
you should. The coach knew enough about me at that time.
Okay.
And he had already been coaching my boy.
Just like more support. Hey,
he was like,
pick his brain.
Just like talk to him.
Yeah.
Like, just talk to him, and we have been cool ever since, man. And one of the best bits of advice that he gave me, because I was always very much, man, I want to build some of my boys all the time. Anything I want to do, I was like, let me figure out how to make it so we can all do this thing together. And it would be frustrating because sometimes everybody's not always at that same place with you, or they're not as passionate about it, whatever. You feel like you're like dragging people along.
Been there, yeah.
And he told me, man, I always knew I was gonna make something dope with him. Like I always knew it was gonna be a business, because he has the same mentality that I do. Very much, let's build something. Let's go get this money. Let's do some stuff. And he told me, he said, don't let anybody stop you, and don't let anybody delay you, not even me. And I'm just like, damn, like he's one of the most go-getting dudes I know. But it meant that even the closest people to you, don't let anybody stop you from accomplishing what you have in your mind to accomplish. And I really just, it changed the way I moved, you know what I mean? Because I always want to build something that like everybody I always want to build something that all my closest people can benefit from, and we could all eat together, man. That's always the dream. But mainly I want to make sure that I can build it and do it. Because if I'm waiting all the time, then nobody's eating, right? We're all just still sitting here waiting. So I would say not being deterred, and not waiting on people to do something that you want to do, and not letting anybody tell if one door is closing, kick another door down. If somebody won't let you on the hill with them, man, fucking dig up your own dirt and build your own hill and look at them from the other side. Like, just always know that you don't have to have anybody to put you on to get there. Someone had to start it. You know what I mean? Like everything that exists, everything that we're looking at, that we want, that we desire, that we're trying to strive towards, at some point somebody built that, man. And they built it without anybody else showing them the way or platforming them. Like, they did it because there was no other way for them to be. So I would say that's my biggest bit of advice. Just don't let anybody tell you no. Don't let anybody convince you that your dream can't be real. And if you can exist like that and know that it may take a lifetime to do what you're trying to do, it doesn't matter. If it means something to you, then do it. So that's probably the best advice I have for anybody, because it's gonna look different for everybody at different times, man.
I appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, bro.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Man, thanks for having me, bro.
I'm proud of you. I love you, bro.
I love you too, man. I'm proud of you as well. I would love to see you pulling all this together, man, and not passively living, bro.
Yeah, I can't stand that. I've been there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had those moments where it's just like, exactly, like passively living, right? Smoking a blunt, chilling, watching TV, indulging in just bad habits. And
it's not good enough, man.
No, it's not. It doesn't feel good.
It's not good enough. And not to like shit on anybody, but just for me, for us, there's us who like striving to try different things, do different things, fucking like.
Doesn't feed me to just consume.
Nah. And I can't just be sitting there existing till retirement type of mentality, man.